Hello everybody, Ultimate Player on the scene here. I know this is a really weird video because I'm just kind of recording off my new phone, but that's not what this is about right now. Now, of course, what I want to talk about is one of the most ridiculous things ever, at least to me. To me. And one of those things that I'm going to talk about is the old setup versus the new setup in Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, of course, I don't want anybody thinking that I'm like trying to put down the new setup of Yu-Gi-Oh! Of like 3 and 3 of monster, of course, of the monster zone, and of course the spell and trap card zone, and of course, like, the extra deck is still there and the deck zone and all that stuff. But it is kind of ridiculous to me. Now, of course, the reason why I'm saying this is because in the old setup of Yu-Gi-Oh, where you had like those two extra slots in the spell and trap card zone, and of course in the monster zone, um, I feel like that the old setup was better. Now, of course, I'm not saying like get rid of the old, new setup, get rid of the blah 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 blah. Like, I'm not saying that. No, screw that. No way. I'm not saying that whatsoever. Now, of course, I'm not saying that, but it does make sense why I dislike it, because I kind of am used to the old way of playing, because the old way of playing I feel like is way better than the new way. The new way of playing just seems like an absolute waste of time. And I'm not saying like it's the worst thing in the world. Of course I am back. Of course I was going to make new videos and stuff, but I was just going to put my point out there real quick that Duel Monsters is a game like Duel Monsters, aka Yu-Gi-Oh, is a game where you have 4,000 life points and all that stuff and whatever. Now, of course, the next thing I want to talk about is a game called is apparently people comparing Yu-Gi-Oh versus Pokemon. Now, of course, I'm not talking about like, Yu-Gi-Oh characters versus whatever. I'm talking about Duel Monsters versus Pokemon. Now, of course, when it comes to Duel Monsters versus Pokemon, um, I am talking about like when they were actual. I'm talking about when they were like actual creatures in the anime. So it's basically monsters like Dark Magician and all that type of stuff versus Pokemon, which is like Pikachu, Raichu, um, even Mewtwo is a part of this fight. No, a part of this fight. Which, here's the thing: round one, I'm gonna start off with just regular Yu-Gi-Oh. No synchro monsters, no none of that, because I feel like that later you're gonna understand why I didn't start off with synchro monsters or like fusion monsters or any of that nature. Is because I kind of want to start off with the basics, which I'm gonna do something as weak as, let's say, Celtic Guardian versus something basic like Pikachu. Now, of course, Pikachu does have like 60 health, which is decent in most Pokemon versus Pokemon battles, but this is a dual monster versus a Pokemon. Now, of course, when it comes to dual monsters versus Pokemon, dual monster, it's kind of a way harder fight to kind of try and explain, because now you're putting literal monsters. You're putting monsters that have like 14. This is a monster that has like 1,400 attack points versus versus a Pokemon that only has like 60 hit points. Which means if you were to compare the two, it's 1,400 versus. It depends on what mode, which I'm gonna say in attack mode. But even in defense mode, it really doesn't make that much of a difference. It's 1,400 attack points versus only 60 health, which is somewhat ridiculous to me. No, ridiculous to me. I'm saying this because it's kind of redundant. Oh, redundant at this point. Which I'm saying this because it's kind of weird. If you really think about it, dual monsters are extremely powerful in many ways. Dual monsters are not only already extremely powerful compared to Pokemon, but can get stronger in many different ways because there's many different cards and stuff throughout the entire anime and universe of Yu-Gi-Oh. There's equipped spells, trap cards. There's fusion monsters, which I'll get to later, and of course all different types of stuff. Now, of course, when I say this, I do mean that there's not really much you can do with Pokemon. Pokemon are kind of, but when it comes to Pokemon are kind. I noticed that even in the card version of all the Pokemon and all that stuff, Pokemon are very very limited. They don't really have that many abilities. They don't have that many effects. They do have attacks though, which do, but the difference is that they attacks only do a certain amount of damage, which is helpful, but at the same time, against a dual monster, it doesn't really help all that much. Like the max amount of damage, like even legendary. Now, of course, even against like legendary Pokemon, like Mewtwo and stuff like that, or Jaggeron or whatever freak, those most Pokemon I would believe are very lucky to have even over 1,000 attack or 1,000 health. Monsters, on the other hand, on an everyday basis, have like thousands of of attack points. They literally have thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands of attack points. And that being said, dual monsters literally are one of the most insane things you can possibly try and fight. Um, try and fight because even monsters that were literally summoned from literally nothing, like for example, Yubel literally in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, not only did she somehow summon herself to the real world, but she was able to literally become a duelist and attack people with a deck full of monsters that literally were either from a person that she was either controlling, or she was able to literally gain a physical form and do do things that Pokemon can really never hope of doing. For example, if it was a dual monster like Yubel versus something like a legendary Pokemon like Mewtwo, the main problem that Mewtwo would have to run into is that every attack that Mewtwo ever tries to throw at something like Yubel, despite Yubel having zero attack and defense points, is that all of his attacks not only are deflected, but also all the attack points, or but also all the damage would not only be reflected, but also be reflected back at Mewtwo, meaning that he would be basically hurting himself. But even if it wasn't someone like Yubel, which can reflect damage, there are so many monsters that have more attack points than him that it really doesn't matter what monster he's fighting. Even without equipped spells and trap cards to protect that monster, it's going to be a walk in the park for most monsters that try to fight and try to harm the or for most dual monsters that ever try to that Pokemon ever really try to come up in battle. Now, I'm not sure if you can really fuse Pokemon. I'm not sure if you can fuse like a Pikachu with like a Raichu, or a Pikachu with a water monster, or you can fuse Thunder, or you can fuse Thunder type Pokemon. I don't know about any of these things. Pokemon is very void to me. The only real thing I know about Pokemon is the basics and really what they can do. So that's kind of what I'm basing this information off of. For all you Pokemon fans, you guys can literally talk in the comments about what kind of stuff that Pokemon can really do, and their effects and all that crap. and all that crap. But I'm just going off of the current knowledge that I literally have about Pokemon. About Pokemon. Of course, I will compare the characters too, but I'll compare the characters later. Pokemon, but when it comes to Pokemon versus Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon is a very Pokemon are very very fragile compared to dual monsters. Especially when if you're going to talk about like way back, way back when there were actual real monsters instead of just being cards, like when they had to just carve it out of stone tablets and then they could use the monster that they want. Those types of things are extremely hard to fight because dual monsters literally have way more versatile ways of defeating their opponents. Um, Meaning like effects, special abilities that meaning effects, special abilities. They can do a lot, and Pokemon just do not have that advantage. Like they do not have special abilities. They don't have effects. They don't have anything that can really combat things, and they don't have special stuff like spell or trap cards either. They don't have any of that. The best thing that a Pokemon can really do to try and even the score with a dual monster is try evolutions. Which even evolutions I don't think would be enough to fight a dual monster because dual monsters because dual monsters, like I've said, have thousands of attack points. Like they have literally most dual monsters on the daily literally have attack points that are like above 1,000, which I don't think there's any Pokemon out there that have anywhere near that amount of health to go and fight a dual monster apparently. So I really do not know anything that a Pokemon can really do. Like if there are special abilities or special effects that a Pokemon can really use, that is then it would be possible. But as far as I know about Pokemon, like I've actually looked up a lot of stuff about Pokemon. Um, Pokemon aren't really that strong. Like they're powerful, 110%. I will agree with you on that one. They are powerful. They are strong in their own way, but in a straight up fight, like if it was just a Pokemon with no power ups, no evolutions, no nothing, versus dual monsters literally win every time because their attack and defense points are so high that Pokemon just do not have enough health to really fight dual monsters. Most dual monsters have attack and defense points that are literally in the thousands every like on the daily. But daily Pokemon, on the other hand, even if they can really do damage, the real problem is that for most dual monsters they're literally one shot targets. They don't have enough health to really survive a hit from a dual monster. They don't have enough attack points. They don't have enough effects or special abilities that they can really do anything. The only real saving grace that Pokemon really have is that dual monsters do not have a health bar like freaking Pokemon do. But at the same time, the way that dual monsters work and how monsters are fight each other and send each other to the graveyard, just from attacking once, while Pokemon have to, when they fight each other, they literally have to attack multiple times before their opponent faints. When a dual monster fights from one attack, if that monster is more powerful, the opposing monster is instantly destroyed. So basically, you have monsters that literally can destroy each other and be sent to the graveyard, versus Pokemon, which the best they can do is make their opponent faint after multiple attacks of the same thing. Now, of course, the weaknesses of monster. Now, of course, Pokemon dual monsters and of course, dual monsters do not, since they do not go under the same rule as Pokemon do. Pokemon kind of are ridiculous. Pokemon do. That means that you're going to have to do the attack points of a dual monster, the attack or defense points of a dual monster versus the HP of a Pokemon. Which Pokemon do not have that much HP? Like, even the strongest Pokemon have still HP in the hundreds, which dual monsters have attack and defense points in the thousands. Which I don't know. That just seems really far fetched to me that a Pokemon can somehow beat a dual monster in a fight. It seems really weird that a Pokemon could really have that type of power. Um, to that type of power. It sounds far fetched to me. Of course, in the comments, y'all can really talk about which dual monster or which Pokemon can win against who, um, against whoever you want. Now, of course, the round two are the actual characters. While first, let's start off with the characters from Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, of course, the characters from Yu-Gi-Oh! Like Yugi, Jaden, Alexis Rhodes, even from Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds like Yusei Crow or and Jack, and even those like Yuma from Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal and Yuya from Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, all of them are way more powerful than pretty much anyone from Pokemon. It doesn't really matter who you pit them up against, even especially if you're gonna pit them up against Team Rocket. Now, of course, Team Rocket is a very comical villain, but dual monster villains literally are out to do more than just steal Pokemon. They literally are out to destroy to literally most dual monster villains have the ability to literally destroy the entire world using a deck of cards, which is ridiculous to me. Because imagine how much power your deck has to have in order for you to somehow be able to destroy an entire gosh darn city with only monster cards. That's incredibly powerful. You dual monsters I don't think have that level of strength. And even if they did, there are monsters that literally are the size of satellites, and can shoot like beams at their target. They have perfect aim, all of that. Dual monsters literally are much more powerful than anything from Pokemon. Pokemon are strong, but in reality, dual monsters are Pokemon are strong, but dual monsters outclass them 10 to 1. So outclass them by the thousands of attack and defense points that a dual monster has. But even monsters that have 0 attack points can easily defeat a Pokemon can easily defeat a Pokemon, mainly because of most monsters that have 0 attack points have special abilities or effects or cards to back them up and give them attack points. Like, for example, spell cards, trap cards, all that's Jazz, all that. But monsters, on the other hand, they are just nowhere near. They're just not strong enough. But Pokemon, on the other hand, compared to dual monsters, Pokemon are nowhere near strong enough. Like, they're powerful, but nowhere near strong enough to fight a dual monster. They're just nowhere. They're just not strong enough. I'm sorry. I'm just not convinced that somehow a Pokemon can beat a dual monster in battle. It's very far fetched to me. It's very weird. I don't know. It just seems really unlikely that a Pokemon would defeat a dual monster if they were ever to fight. Um, ever to fight. Now, of course, this is my system of comparing a dual monster to a Pokemon. That's why I say dual monsters kind of win, because when you compare the HP of a Pokemon versus the attack and defense points of a dual monster, you really don't get that much of a fight, because all the dual monster has to do is literally land one attack and it's game over. Like that's pretty much all that a dual monster has to do. Like, for example, Dark Magician versus Pikachu. Um, Stardust Dragon versus Raichu. Uh, Cyber End Dragon versus Mewtwo. Like, Cyber End Dragon literally has 4,000 attack points. I don't know any Pokemon that has anywhere near enough health to fight that thing. I have no clue what kind of monster or what kind of Pokemon can really fight. If you have any monsters that or any Pokemon that can really fight the dual monsters that really are whatever, then yeah, you have a chance. However, if you really want to use a different method of turning dual monsters into Pokemon, then you'd have to take away the whole attack and defense point thing, and instead you would have to combine the attack and defense points of monsters, and then and then make it be in the hundreds. Which, even if you do that, the dual monsters literally still have more attack points than freaking have more health than Pokemon do. Like, for example, I would imagine like a dark magician starting out as a dual monster, literally as a dual monster that has been turned into a Pokemon. I would believe that even as a Pokemon, a dark magician related Pokemon would literally start off with like 250 250 attack points and can easily have over 1,000 health, which that's a lot of health to have for a Pokemon. To have for a Pokemon, like, easily. He could literally evolve once, and somehow he goes from having 250 health to having like 170, 1,750 health, which that's with one upgrade. He pretty much is back to being a dual monster without being a dual monster. Dual, like, it's just way too dual monsters with their current stats are way too powerful. Like, Pokemon are strong, but dual monsters are just outclass them. Like, they literally treat Pokemon as if they're absolute garbage. Let alone dual monsters can combine in many different ways. You can use them for Xyz monster. You can combine them and make Xyz monsters. You can combine them and make Synchro monsters. You can combine them using the power of polymerization, which is a spell card, and summon fusion monsters. You can even do contact fusion, which doesn't even require polymerization. My point is, dual monsters literally effects have these effects and everything, but when it comes down to Pokemon versus dual monsters, dual monst Pokemon versus dual monsters, I personally think that Pokemon are easily defeated. Easily defeated. Now, of course, if you're gonna compare characters, then you have a discussion. Not much of one, but you have one. Now, of course, when it comes down to, because saying Dark Magician versus Pikachu would be the equivalent of saying Yu-Gi-Moto versus Ash Ketchum. Like, it's just not much of a fight. You literally are sending the king of games to go battle a 10-year-old kid that literally that literally, even in one of the rap battles is on the internet of video game rap battles, link in the description. Even his, even the rap, even with that, Yugi kind of had a point. Yugi literally won his very first duel throughout the entire series of Yu-Gi-Oh! And kept winning duels while it took while it took 20 years, aka I have no idea how this kid is literally still 10. Like, it's been 20 years before you won one league. One league. I literally dueled for the first time and had an actual real duel against Kaiba, and I beat him. Beat him. I literally won my very first duel on episode 1 while you took almost 20 years to win a league. To win a league once. That's kind of a really stupid thing that's really stupid to compare someone who won on their first turn versus on their first duel versus someone who had to go through tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of battles just to be able to win one league. That makes very little sense to make that comparison. Same thing with Joey versus Misty. The only real problem is that Misty's not much of a Pokemon trainer. She's more of just a cheerleader, or she's just like his girlfriend or something. Or like Ash's girlfriend or something. Like, I'm very much lost when it comes to the relationship between Misty and Ash. It's an on-off I don't know. I just kind of see it as an on-off relationship, honestly. I just do not understand how you have a girl on your team and you have no feelings for her whatsoever. That's kind of messed up. Anyways, what I'm saying is that when it comes to Pokemon versus Yu-Gi-Oh!, I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Literally can wipe the floor with pretty much anyone from Pokemon, no matter who the character is. It doesn't matter if it's Team Rocket, doesn't matter if it's Giovanni, it doesn't even matter if it's if it's whoever. Duel Monsters beats Pokemon. That's all I'm saying. All I'm saying. You say Yuma doesn't matter. Like literally Yuma would, if literally, that would be the easy, let's say Pokemon were somehow Duel Monsters, you literally would have the easiest fight in the entire world. You would, that would be Yuma's easiest win throughout all of Duel Monsters. And that would be the easiest fight the reason why I'm saying this is because even if they were even if they used the Pokemon version or the Yu-Gi-Oh version of Duel Monsters, Yu-Gi-Oh version of Pokemon and pin them against Duel Monsters, at that point you would have to change literally so much. You would have to give each Pokemon an attribute. You would have to give them a level or rank if you wanted to make them an Xyz monster or some other monster that doesn't have a level. You would have to add spell cards that can support that Yu-Gi-Oh version of a Pokemon. You'd have to add so much. You'd have to do so much depending on what kind of card you decided to turn that Pokemon into. And while Pokemon on the other hand, they're just not that strong. Or at least I don't think so. That's just not much of a fight. Anyways, guys, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. And of course, I really am planning on making videos again. I will keep making videos on my phone just talking about just random stuff until I feel like I've had enough of the video. Anyways, guys, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a like down below. And also, if you guys have any ideas of what I should do for another video, let me know in the comments below as well. Thanks again, everyone. And as always, I will see you in another video. Stay alive, my survivors.